Have you ever wondered why some women seem to radiate their own light, even when they're walking their path alone? They are not lost, nor are they lonely. In fact, they are embarking on the most audacious journey of their lives, that of finding themselves, healing, and living with an authenticity few dare to experience. What drives them is not a lack of something, but the fullness of themselves, unveiling a truth that society often tries to hide. Stay here to discover what truly drives these women to forge this autonomy. And if you value freedom, go ahead and hit that like button. Then join us by subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss any new videos. This is an invitation to demystify the lives of women who, instead of following the pre-written script of relationships and societal expectations, choose to tread a singular path. They are the architects of their own peace, the guardians of their energy, and the masters of their own happiness. Forget everything you've been told about the spinster or the needy woman. We're talking about a silent force, a personal revolution that defies the status quo and reveals the true power of a woman who chooses herself daily. These women aren't cold or insensitive. They are discerning. The solitude they embrace isn't a refuge from pain, but a sacred space for self-discovery. Imagine Cecilia, an architect in her early 30s, who, after years of trying to fit into relationships that drained her, decided it was time to stop begging for affection. She didn't isolate herself, but carefully chose who would have access to her energy, preferring the peace of her own company to the turbulence of superficial connections. This intentional choice of peace and reciprocity is what sets them apart. They don't seek to fill voids with another person, but rather to connect with individuals who also arrive whole, willing to build a partnership based on mutual growth and respect. The decision to live alone, for many of them, stems from deep inner work. It's not the result of heartbreak, but rather a process of emotional healing and facing their own shadows. This journey is, in many cases, an act of ancestral healing, breaking generational cycles and inherited traumas, and reigniting a long-suppressed feminine power. They unraveled the web of beliefs that dictate a woman's worth is tied to her relationship status, challenging emotional dependency and the control often disguised as love. A self-sufficient woman is a threat to the system, as she exposes collective insecurities and threatens social structures built on female compliance and neediness. When they refuse to beg for love, attention, or presence, and instead seek soul-level connections based on maturity and growth, they become beacons of authenticity. This isn't a defense mechanism, but a sacred preservation of their essence. Ultimately, the woman who chooses herself daily, who doesn't wait to be chosen, who radiates silent confidence and emotional sovereignty, is the true revolutionary. Her journey is a celebration of wholeness over halves, of clarity over compromise. She doesn't seek someone to complete her, but someone who is also whole, reflecting a shared journey rather than codependency. This woman isn't defending herself from the world, but rather preserving her essence, creating a sanctuary for her inner peace and for the blossoming of her most authentic energy. Solitude, for her, is a portal to the deepest of connections, the connection with herself. It's in this space that she finds the strength to rewrite her own story, free from the shackles of others' expectations and the societal pressures that insist on diminishing her worth. For these women, solitude isn't a sign of weakness, but a declaration of strength, an invisible armor that protects their energy and inner truth. They understand that the search for an other to fill supposed gaps is a trap. Instead, they focus on becoming whole on their own, cultivating deep self-acceptance and emotional security that makes them unshakable. This journey of self-discovery is an act of radical self-love, a path where every step is an affirmation of their own dignity and worth. Regardless of what the outside world may dictate, they aren't waiting for a Prince Charming, they are building their own kingdom, and, in doing so, they inspire and, yes, sometimes unsettle those around them who are still caught in old narratives. And this freedom to be whole, to not settle for halves, is what makes them so fascinating and, to some, even threatening. They aren't seeking applause or external validation. Their most valuable approval comes from within. It's the silent revolution of a woman who, instead of waiting to be chosen, chooses herself every dawn. She doesn't negotiate her peace, doesn't bargain her essence for a place that doesn't honor her. It's a confidence that needs no fanfare, an emotional sovereignty that manifests in every decision, in every no said to what doesn't serve her. It's this subtle and unshakable power that transforms her into a quietly revolutionary force, capable of inspiring changes not only in her own life, but in the collective perception of what it means to be a strong and fulfilled woman today. She proves that true completeness isn't found in another being, but in the courage to delve deep within herself. The silence that surrounds the woman who lives alone isn't emptiness. It's a sanctuary, and those who don't understand the value of that space often call her cold, distant, or even arrogant. But few people see that she didn't build that fortress to shut the world out. She built it to not lose herself. Carl Jung, with his profound understanding of the human psyche, posited that everything we don't face within ourselves, we end up projecting onto others. This concept is vital here, as it highlights why many still confuse the chosen solitude of these women with mere absence, when in reality it is a fertile ground for genuine self-discovery. While the majority of people look to fill themselves through external connections, this woman turned her gaze inward, and there, in the vastness of her own unconscious, she faced the ghosts she had avoided for years: childhood wounds, unspoken abandonments, and attachments often disguised as love. Her decision to be alone didn't spring from an open wound, but from a scar that had finally healed. She didn't stop believing in love. She simply stopped accepting what others called love when it only made her feel smaller. This awakening, often a grueling process of stripping off masks and confronting emotional dependencies, is precisely what Jung described as the individuation process, the path to becoming fully who you are, without compromise. This woman knows chaos. She's loved until she lost herself. She's given too much. She's begged for crumbs that never should have been offered in the first place. But at some point, she woke up. And that awakening wasn't sudden. It was a series of disappointments that ceased to sting and began to teach. What you see now isn't coldness. It's emotional maturity. And maturity, as Jung suggested, is terrifying because it demands presence, depth, and truth. She doesn't want just any company, she wants reciprocity. She's no longer attracted to promises, but to genuine presence. This is why she might seem unreachable to many. It's because she doesn't want to be saved. She wants to be seen, and that requires more than charm or sweet words. It takes the courage to dive into the depths where few dare to go, and that's where many give up. Not because she is difficult, but because she is whole. When a woman becomes whole, she awakens. Two extremes in the world: admiration and fear. Admiration from those also seeking that wholeness, and fear from those who still live in halves, perpetually waiting for someone else to complete them. She doesn't want to complete anyone. She wants to overflow alongside someone who has also found themselves. Until then, she remains alone, not by fate's whim, but out of unwavering loyalty to her own soul. This woman isn't hiding. She's protecting herself. There's a vast difference between isolating and preserving oneself. Yet, the world doesn't easily accept a woman like this, a world that still preaches that happily ever after exists only in pairs. A world that distrusts those without a partner, as if that were a sign of failure. Carl Jung famously stated that where convention rules, there's little room for authenticity. And this woman doesn't live by convention. She lives by essence. She hears phrases like, "You're too picky, you should be more open, nobody's perfect." And she smiles. A calm, steady, almost ironic smile. Because she knows what many call picky is simply the bare minimum. The minimum it took her decades to realize she deserves. She's not looking for perfection. She's looking for someone mature enough to love without destroying, someone who has done the inner work she has already faced. And let's be honest, that's not something you find on just any street corner. The discomfort she causes isn't in what she says. It's in what she represents. She is living proof that it's possible to be truly happy without depending on anyone else. And that tears off masks. Men who feed on female insecurity feel threatened. Women still trapped in the need for approval feel judged. But she isn't here to confront anyone. She's just being. And the authenticity of someone who has freed herself is, by itself, a brutal mirror to those still living in chains. This woman isn't in a hurry. She doesn't need to rush things to please anyone. She respects her own pace, and for that she stirs a silent fury in a society that wants everything now. She wants depth while the world chases distractions. She wants presence while the world offers only shallow availability. She longs for soul-level bonds while everyone else is trying to look interesting on the next social media post. And when she says no, perhaps what unsettles people most about this woman isn't her solitude, it's the peace she's found within herself. Carl Jung taught that those who look outward dream, but those who look inward awaken. And it was precisely that inner journey that she took. It wasn't easy. It was a grueling process of stripping off masks, facing the ghosts of emotional dependency, and rebuilding herself piece by piece. She no longer defines herself through the eyes of others. She sees herself through her own eyes, and that changes everything. If you're enjoying this perspective and feel that this message resonates with you, subscribe to the channel and enable notifications so you don't miss any content that will further empower you. If you feel a growing restlessness, a need to break free from old expectations and build a life guided by your own truth, know that this quest is not in vain. It's your authentic self preparing for the freedom and fulfillment that await you. There are powerful principles and practices that can illuminate this path of autonomy and self-affirmation, empowering you to live with an unshakable clarity and peace. In the pinned comment, we have made available resources that were carefully crafted for souls like yours, ready to live their most powerful personal revolution. How many times have you wondered if being alone is failure or freedom? How many times have you felt the need to justify yourself for not having someone by your side? This woman has felt that too. She once thought there was something wrong with her for being alone in a world that idolizes couples, even unhappy ones. But one day she understood it's better to be alone than to be invisible in a relationship. And that day she made a pact with herself. Never again would she accept less than what she truly deserves. Her path is not a straight line. There are days of doubt, moments of nostalgia, nights of deep silence, but there's also a strength that grows with each decision made in awareness. She learned that true love doesn't cage, doesn't consume, doesn't manipulate. The love she wants is the kind that liberates, that adds, that supports without suffocating. And until that love arrives, she chooses to keep growing on her own. Not out of pride, but out of integrity. This woman is the living embodiment of Jung's individuation. She shattered, faced her shadow, descended into the unconscious, and returned more whole than ever. And now that she recognizes herself, she refuses to be half of anything again. She doesn't want someone to complete her. She wants someone to share that awareness with. That's intimidating because it demands emotional responsibility. And sadly, few are willing to love responsibly. Most still love out of lack, out of possession, out of fear. And if she walks alone today, it's because every step echoes with learning. Every no she gives is an act of self. Every absence she imposes is a reminder that love should never be begged for. She no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. And that certainty born from the deepest part of her soul transforms everything around her. Because a woman who has rediscovered herself becomes dangerous, not because of her weapons, but because of her clarity. The woman who lives alone without a boyfriend is not the same woman who once begged to be loved. Something inside her broke, and it was precisely that break that set her free, because sometimes only in collapse does the soul find its new form. Carl Jung used to say that the tree that grows to heaven must also have roots that reach down to hell, and that's exactly what she lived through. She descended into the hell of her own story, faced ancestral fears, inherited pain, traumas that weren't just hers, but those of all the women who came before her. She broke cycles. She said no to relationships that repeated the same toxic script. She learned that it wasn't her job to heal anyone, save anyone, or accept crumbs out of fear of being alone. And when she stopped accepting less, the world tried to convince her she was wrong. But she stood her ground, first with uncertainty, then with awareness, and finally with invulnerability, because someone who has lived in their own abyss no longer fears absence. She learns to nourish herself with silence, to warm herself with her own presence. She's not unreachable. She simply no longer allows herself to be invaded. There's a world of difference between opening your heart and letting yourself be torn apart. She opens, yes, but only for those who come in truth, not with rehearsed speeches or empty promises. She's seen enough to tell the difference between presence and performance. Her intuition has become sharp. Her energy is a filter. She can sense from afar what lacks depth, and she doesn't hesitate to walk away. Her transformation isn't superficial, it's archetypal. It's as if she's tapped into an ancient wisdom, an old memory that women weren't born to serve, but to express, not to be shaped, but to overflow. And in accessing that memory, something awakened in her, a wild woman, intuitive, emotionally sovereign. A woman who, though alone, is far from lost. She's in communion with something greater, with her own destiny. And no matter how much they try to reduce her with labels, difficult, distant, nothing sticks. Because she no longer lives to fit in. She lives to expand. She no longer fights for attention. She radiates presence. She's no longer waiting to be chosen. She does the choosing. And that reversal of logic confuses those who still try to control the feminine. But she's no longer there. She's already crossed the threshold. And on the other side, she discovered that the real relationship begins only after you've loved yourself, enough to not need anyone. There's something sacred about the way she walks through the world. She doesn't need applause or public validation. Her confidence is quiet, and it's in that silence that her true strength lives. Carl Jung said that everything we face within eventually becomes our destiny. And perhaps that's why this woman, in choosing herself again and again, has become the author of a destiny that few can understand but many secretly envy. She no longer tries to fill voids with promises or convince anyone that she deserves love. She doesn't beg for space in anyone's life because she's learned that presence should never be begged for. It should be invited. And when the invitation doesn't come from truth, she simply declines. She doesn't react with anger or bitterness. She steps away with the dignity of someone who's gotten lost too many times to let the same wound happen again. What few people understand is that this woman still longs for love. She still wants to be held, touched, chosen, but she wants it without losing herself, because she's spent too long trying to squeeze into molds too small for the soul she carries. Now, she only offers herself where there's room to be whole. And that requires a level of maturity that goes far beyond romance. It requires awareness. It requires having faced one's own shadow and still choosing to love. She's not looking for fairy tales. She's looking for a soul alliance. A connection where there's no domination or submission. Where both can grow beside each other without dimming their colors, silencing their pain, or shrinking their dreams. And if that seems too much for some, so be it, because she'd rather wait than survive on emotional crumbs, and to many that sounds like arrogance. But it's really just self-love in its purest form. We are witnessing a new archetype of woman, a woman who has walked away from the superficial and dived into the depths, who got tired of being merely desired and chose to be respected, who chose to be alone not because she gave up on love, but because she began to understand that real love never demands self-denial. And when a woman understands that, her whole world begins to change. She doesn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Her presence speaks before any words. Wherever she goes, the energy shifts, like something in the room realigns subtly but unmistakably. This isn't mysticism, it's energy. It's the weight of someone who has already faced the most brutal inner wars and chose to return in peace. Not because she conquered all her fears, but because she learned to live with them without being defeated. Carl Jung would say she found wholeness not by eliminating opposites, but by integrating them. This woman doesn't reject love. She's simply learned not to submit to unbalanced relationships where one must dim so the other can shine. She longs to love, but in a love where her essence doesn't need to be edited. A love where she can be both shadow and light, laughter and tears, silence and storm. Because she realized that those who only love the pretty parts haven't yet learned what love truly is. And those who demand constant sweetness still don't understand the beauty of bitterness, so necessary for growth. She's too whole to settle for halves, too free to accept prisons disguised as care, too sensitive to endure shallow bonds, and at the same time strong enough to keep choosing this path, even when it hurts, even when it's lonely, even when it's misunderstood. That is the journey of an awakened soul, giving up instant validation in exchange for deeper truth. Deep down, the world fears women like her. Women who don't need, women who don't bow, women who refuse to be molded because they challenge invisible structures, question old patterns, and break silent emotional contracts that once said a woman only has worth if she is with someone. And when she breaks those contracts, when she rewrites her own narrative, she inspires others. And that, for the system, is dangerously revolutionary. So she continues, sometimes with tears in her eyes, sometimes with her chest held high, but always with her feet firmly on the ground, because now she knows she's not alone. She's with herself, and after everything she's lived through, that is more than enough. The love that comes after that won't be salvation. It will be celebration. It won't come to fill her. It will come to overflow. Carl Jung would say she found wholeness not by eliminating opposites, but by integrating them. This woman doesn't reject love. She's simply learned not to submit to unbalanced relationships where one must dim so the other can shine. She longs to love, but in a love where her essence doesn't need to be edited. A love where she can be both shadow and light, laughter and tears, silence and storm. Because she realized that those who only love the pretty parts haven't yet learned what love truly is, and those who demand constant sweetness still don't understand the beauty of bitterness, so necessary for growth. She's too whole to settle for halves, too free to accept prisons disguised as care, too sensitive to endure shallow bonds, and at the same time strong enough to keep choosing this path, even when it hurts, even when it's lonely, even when it's misunderstood. That is the journey of an awakened soul, giving up instant validation in exchange for deeper truth. Deep down, the world fears women like her. These are women who don't need, women who don't bow, women who refuse to be molded by external pressures. They challenge invisible structures, questioning old patterns that have long dictated societal norms. They break silent emotional contracts that once declared a woman's worth was solely tied to being with someone. When she shatters these agreements, when she boldly rewrites her own narrative, she sparks inspiration in countless others, and that, for the established system, is profoundly and dangerously revolutionary. So she continues her journey, sometimes with tears welling in her eyes, a testament to the vulnerability she now embraces. Other times, she walks with her chest held high, radiating an inner strength that is palpable. But always, without fail, her feet remain firmly planted on the ground, connected to her truth. Because now she understands, with an unshakable certainty, that she isn't alone. She is, in fact, powerfully and completely with herself, a profound realization. And after everything she's lived through, every challenge faced and overcome, that profound connection with herself is more than enough. The love that eventually comes after this profound self-discovery won't be a salvation, a rescue from a perceived void. Instead, it will be a glorious celebration of two whole beings coming together. It won't arrive to fill some empty space within her, because she is already overflowing with her own essence. This kind of love will come to join her abundance, to amplify the joy and completeness she already possesses. It is a love built on true partnership, not on need or dependency. Her journey has forged an inner compass, unwavering and true, that guides her choices. She no longer seeks external validation for her existence or her decisions. Every step she takes is a conscious act, a reflection of her deepened understanding of self-worth. This clarity means she can discern genuine connection from superficiality, recognizing when an interaction truly nourishes her spirit. She's discovered that true power lies not in controlling others, but in mastering herself. This self-mastery allows her to navigate the complexities of life with grace and resilience. She understands that her emotional freedom is her most valuable asset, a treasure cultivated through introspection and courage. This profound realization sets her apart, making her a beacon for others seeking similar liberation. This woman represents a profound shift in feminine consciousness, a rejection of centuries-old narratives that confined women to predefined roles. She embodies the spirit of rebellion against any force that seeks to diminish her or dictate her path. Her very presence is a quiet revolution, inspiring others to question their own unspoken contracts and inherited limitations. She has learned that genuine connection thrives on authenticity, not on pretense or performance. Therefore, she approaches all relationships with an open heart, but also with keen discernment. She understands that true intimacy flourishes when both individuals are committed to their own growth and to meeting each other in a space of integrity and respect. Her inner peace is not a fragile thing, easily disturbed by external chaos. It is a deep, unshakable calm, born from having navigated profound personal storms and emerged stronger. This tranquility makes her magnetic, drawing those who are genuinely aligned with her values and repelling those who operate from a place of fear or manipulation. She understands that life's journey is continuous, filled with both triumphs and setbacks. Her strength lies not in avoiding challenges, but in her unwavering commitment to herself through every phase. This resilience allows her to embrace uncertainty, knowing that each experience, painful or joyful, contributes to her ongoing evolution and deepening wisdom. She has cultivated a profound sense of self-trust, an inner knowing that guides her toward what genuinely serves her highest good. This trust eliminates the need for external approval or validation, freeing her to make choices that are deeply aligned with her authentic self. Her life becomes a testament to the power of living with conviction and unwavering self-loyalty. This profound self-possession means she carries a unique energy that subtly influences every space she enters. People may not consciously understand it, but they sense her unshakable presence and quiet power. Her journey is a living testament to the transformative potential of self-discovery and the immense freedom that comes from choosing to be truly, unequivocally yourself. Share this video with other women who need to remember their own strength. Like it, comment, and subscribe to this channel, not out of impulse, but out of choice. Because when something touches the soul, the least we can do is let it keep resonating within us and through us.